Since entering the world of K-pop around 2008, 2009, when I was in middle school, I have experienced many culture shocks that have left me pretty baffled. Here in America, there's a huge conservative community. Like, we know that. Anyone in America knows that. But I have found that Korean pop culture's conservative ideals have a huge hold on how the industry, in particular celebrities, are perceived through this conservative lens. What I have found over the last few years, though, is that I feel like conservatism or right-wing propaganda, those terms aren't enough to describe what's going on. Those are certainly true, but it's just not enough. And there's a new element of control that has been introduced by the rise of social media. And it has really highlighted the lack of empathy and emotional intelligence in today's younger generations. Do I feel like it's the younger generation's fault for having a lack of empathy and a lack of emotional intelligence? Not necessarily. There's a lot that goes into that, and that's a whole other video for another day. Not all people who consume K-pop are narcissists, obviously, but in this video, we're going to be exploring the impacts of disposability culture on not only us as consumers, but the biggest victims in all of this, the idols.
And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Miss Alex, and this is me doing things.
And this is going to be a long one, so grab a snack. I have a lot of yapping to do, okay? I also have never done a video essay ever before in my life, so if the editing is horrendous, just blame it on me being like a millennial or something. I don't know. I also want to give a pretty big trigger warning. There will be mentions of suicide, mental health struggles, dangerous situations, death, eating disorders. If those are very serious and if they trigger you in any way, I completely understand. If you can't sit through this, I totally understand. If that is the case, I will see you in the next video. So what is disposability culture? So disposability culture first came to light when society started talking more about overconsumption, often referring to fast fashion or unsustainable products with negative environmental impacts. In relationships, it refers to individuals severing social ties or relationships. Disposability culture is basically when you feel like something isn't convenient for you, so you just throw it away. Wonderful, yeah. In K-pop, this would be the relationship between the idol and the fan. If the idol makes a decision that doesn't fit into what the fan sees as convenient for them, the fan then throws that relationship away or tries to cancel them or both. The impacts of disposability culture can be brief, but most of the time they are permanent and can sometimes lead to very dangerous situations and even death, okay? So when there is no emotional safety, physical safety is also put at risk. If one doesn't have the skills to properly process emotions, it can lead to extreme anger, impatience, and even violence. These concepts have been very obvious to me within the K-pop community. So let's get into what led to this disposability culture in the first place and what we can do as consumers or fans to take accountability to make this a safer environment for everybody. Okay, so just a little history lesson. We could talk about Korean history all day long and for days and days and days, but to better understand how we got to where we are now, there are some important things to know about South Korea. South Korea, for the most part, is pretty conservative. Korea split into two nations in the 40s, becoming North and South Korea. So South Korea is a fairly young country. It's no surprise that they're more conservative. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that, depending on whatever your personal beliefs are. But it's important to mention when asking why South Korea is more strict with their social rules. But even though South Korea is a young country, they're passing so many other countries when it comes to academics and economic power. I asked my friend Serena, who is Korean, if she would help review the history portion of this essay, and she very kindly agreed to share some things that I think are very, very important to mention. Korea was a pretty poor country up until the 1990s. And going back to when Korea was colonized by Japan, lots of hunger, lots of famine. Serena mentioned that her grandparents actually didn't get her mom a birth certificate until after she was 1 year old because it was very common for babies in Korea to not survive past 1 year due to malnutrition. All of this, along with other horrendous things that were done to Korean people, right? We could talk about this all day long. All of this caused Korea to become very determined to never have to go back to poverty, which makes sense. Korea had already founded capitalist companies Samsung in the late 1930s and Hyundai in the late 1960s, whose business models were inspired by Western countries. But it wasn't enough. In the 90s, Korea decided to invest more in entertainment, which is how K-pop was born. Korea has always been very inspired by the United States due to their support during the Korean War, which has led to the romanticization of US culture, or US pop culture, I should say, thus making appealing to the American audience a goal or like a form of success. Serena also pointed out that while Korea supports education for all and has universal healthcare, it's still conservative in its politics and the social models are still very misogynistic. Overall, Korea industrialized fairly quickly, and we see that hard work and determination as they pass many other countries, including the US, in innovation. As someone who grew up in America, I will be the first to tell you that our public school system does not even compare, okay? These kids are studying all day long in Korea and still somehow participating in extracurricular activities. Korea prioritizes education so much more than we do in the United States. And though these kids have gained study skills that completely surpass anything that I ever saw in my broke-ass neighborhood of Southeast Portland, Oregon, these kids are also under a lot of pressure. Physical aesthetics, material wealth all play an incredibly important role for social status, which has led to a major bullying problem in schools as well. Yes, those things are relevant here in America. Of course they are. But here, plastic surgery isn't as accessible or affordable for the middle or lower classes unless we want to rack up a bunch of credit card debt. South Korea plays an incredibly important role in the beauty and luxury industries, and all of this together creates the perfect concoction for the perfect person. South Korea is very competitive. Who's the prettiest? Who's the smartest? Who's the most talented? Who works the hardest? If you're applying for a job, you may even have to include a picture of yourself on your resume or your application. It's really important to note that the first double eyelid surgery was performed in Korea by an American plastic surgeon during the Korean War, which marks the beginning of Eurocentric features as beauty standards. Along with all of this, Korean people often have to deal with intense shaming when they make a mistake, which is only going to be amplified if you're in the spotlight. They're also encouraged to apologize after being a part of a scandal, even if they are innocent. The way I see it is that they have to apologize for inconveniencing people, even if they didn't necessarily do anything. Their name is a part of the scandal. They still have to apologize. Korean pop culture skyrocketed in the West with the rise of global sensations, BTS and Blackpink. And finally, our friends and family were starting to understand the hype behind all of the random K-dramas we had saved in our list in Netflix. For those who were unaware of Korean pop culture before, they were suddenly made aware of the immense hard work it takes to become an idol or an actor in Korea. And as the West finally got on the bandwagon, tension started to rise between Korean and international fandoms. Social media, especially with the popularity of apps like TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, and YouTube, us fans started to see the stark differences between our country's values. Here in the West, we tend to be a lot more laid back when it comes to dating, sex, smoking, gardening, if you will. But that's not necessarily the case with the Korean fan base. And in my opinion, these differences in our value systems have been one of the biggest struggles of being a K-pop fan over the last few years. And this goes so much deeper than just not wanting your favorite idol to date someone. The intense parasocial relationships that have been consciously and subconsciously marketed to fans are taking a huge toll on everybody's mental health. As someone who pays a lot of attention to how Gen Z is doing mentally and economically, the rise in disposability culture has been very apparent to me in Korea for a long time. But while it's more intense, it's getting really bad here in the States as well. Like really bad. We and the companies that enable us need to take responsibility and accountability for that. If we don't, I believe that the industry will fall apart, and it will be because of our collective lack of empathy and emotional intelligence. Gen Z is becoming more and more conservative here in the West, and particularly here in America, our public school system is getting worse. It has been proven that there is a correlation between lack of education and far-right ideation, right? This is a recipe for absolute disaster. And it lays the groundwork for a future where no one is going to be able to express themselves without the fear of being completely shunned from society. The next thing I want to talk about are conservative ideals versus forced sexuality and racism. I know that that's a mouthful, but one of the most confusing aspects of the K-pop fan universe is the forced sexuality, especially amongst group members. Like we already discussed, Korea is pretty conservative, yet fandoms are constantly shipping members together. Sometimes it can be confusing when fans expect idols to act romantically involved with other members when it completely negates the traditional or conservative values of Korea. Obviously, not all Korean people are homophobic or transphobic. I know that. But there's a reason why there aren't very many idols who are publicly out, right? And I want to make it very clear, I don't think shipping members together is a bad thing. I love a good Mark and Yuta moment, okay? Most of the time it's super cute and it's super funny, and a lot of times these idols do play into it, so it's not like our fault. I know that. But some take it too far, and that's who I want to focus on, okay? Some of these toxic fans actually make up stories about these idols being gay, which can be very dangerous. And it's not fair, regardless of what country you're in or how your country feels about the LGBTQ community. Forcing someone to come out is never okay. And then it's like, what if they're not even gay? You know, I make it clear as well. I'm not necessarily talking about those who enjoy watching the like satirical compilation videos of two idols like being funny together. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm an N citizen, okay? I know a good edit when I see one. I am locked up in the N City jail. I know a good edit when I see one, okay? That's not who I'm talking about. Most of us who enjoy watching Mark and Yuta flirt with each other enjoy it because they both play into it so heavily, right? I'm trying to bring attention to those who cross lines and cross boundaries. And I'm going to take you all in a time machine for a second. It brings me back to being in the One Direction fandom with the Larry shippers. Ooh, I know, throwback. A lot of us have hypothesized that Louis and Harry may not even be as close anymore because of the intense shipping. So it can obviously be very damaging to real friendships. And if they are actually in real romantic relationships, it can destroy those connections as well. Let's be Delulu for a second, right? Imagine you're in a relationship with your bias and everyone in their fandom is accusing them of being a sexuality that they may not be. Or in a relationship with someone that they don't have romantic feelings for, and then having to watch them do fan service. You'd have to watch them hold hands, kiss, hug, or do other seemingly romantic things with your partner. And I would imagine that there's a line, right? There would be a point where it would get to be uncomfortable for everybody involved. And what if these idols are a part of the LGBTQ community? Do you think it's fair for you to expose that part of their life in a country where it may not be as accepted? If you said, yes, I need you to go to therapy, because the answer is no. No. You are not in charge of this person's life, and it is not your decision to decide what they do with their personal life. And let's call it for what it is, right? When the fans who cross the line in these kinds of situations, they are fetishizing them, right? And these are usually the same fans who will send funeral wreaths or protest trucks when they found out their idol was vaping on a Tuesday afternoon. We'll get there. It's been speculated for a while, and it wouldn't come as a surprise to me that it's written into contracts that these idols are supposed to have heavy skinship to feed fans' fantasies. And this skinship includes encouraging the idols to like kiss each other, hug, flirt with each other, etc. Again, I want to emphasize, I don't think shipping is bad. I just want to call out those who are trying to force their beliefs and especially their fetishes onto idols to the point of where it's causing the idols emotional damage. And to realize that by doing this, you're treating these idols as objects or as products to be consumed, which implies that they can just be set aside or disposed of when you're done. I'm not saying that shipping is a bad thing. It's actually super funny and fun to participate in. But sometimes it's easy to forget that we don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes. And we can't really talk about K-pop unless we talk about racism and colorism, right? K-pop has depended on Black culture since its inception, which is ironic since a lot of Korean society hates the idea of dark or tan skin. Many idols are actually made fun of when they're tan, as it represents a more working class appearance. Turn on any vlog or like performance, and you will see some idols who are wearing foundation that is like 10 times lighter than their actual skin tone, which is made obvious because it almost never matches their neck. White body paint has also become pretty popular as well. Many toxic fans will comment on more tan appearances and harass idols for being shades darker than their group members. And of course, not everyone in Korea is racist. I know that, but it makes me worry about those who are working behind the scenes as well. Many producers, songwriters, and choreographers for these idols are Black and brown people. Why would toxic fans blatantly disrespect the idol's skin color, knowing full well that what they're consuming is coming from and actively being created by people of color? White people have been stealing from people of color since they just like woke up one day and decided they were equal to Jesus. Just very long time ago. And I have to say, if you are not white and you are trying to align yourself with such behavior, it is only going to leave you bamboozled when you realize that they don't like you either, okay? Racist white people don't even like other white people who align themselves with anything left-leaning or any person of color. Racism very heavily depends on a lack of emotional intelligence. Unfortunately, in order for people to grow out of it, they have to take accountability, which comes with a lot of shame. It turns into a vicious cycle of pointing the finger, and it won't stop until everyone stands in place and takes a moment to reflect on what kind of outward and internalized racism they've participated in or been exposed to. I guess what I really want to say is you look dumb for commenting on someone's skin tone, and it shows that you don't really think through anything that you say. I think Cat's Eye is a breath of fresh air right now. These girls have faced a lot of racism, and I hope they know how much of an impact they're having on K-pop right now. They're also incredibly talented and beautiful, and I think anyone threatened by them should definitely stand down. Having women of color in your space shouldn't feel foreign to you when they created what you're listening to in the first place. Now we're going to talk about women versus men. Women versus men. They fight to the death. I'm kidding. When K-drama started to hit the West pretty hard back in 2020 with the premiere of Crash Landing on You, those of who have been in the game for a while started to take notice of the rise in content of the fantasy of the Korean man. And those who had been consuming Korean pop culture for a while knew that Korea was still pretty conservative, and that this fantasy was just that, fantasy. But there were a lot of people who just assumed Korean men were the same as the characters in these shows or these dramas. This phenomenon has been talked about over and over again, so I won't go too deep into it, but women in Korea started to speak up on how they are treated in their everyday lives, serving as a really important reminder that men are pretty much the same in every country. The 4B movement, which was started in Korea in 2019, has had a chokehold on many countries and different cultures across the globe, encouraging women to stand up for themselves and to rebel against gender norms and societal expectations. Dating in Korea is also a bit different. Becoming official, I would say, is a lot quicker, at least that's what it seems. Communication via texting or calling is also more frequent. Here in the West, situationships is unfortunately very popular. So we may not understand why dating is even considered a scandal in Korea in the first place, given how casual and nonchalant we have gotten over here. But over there, dating is seen, I would say, is a lot more serious. And it's not that casual hookups or situationships don't exist. We've all seen the Hongdae guy on TikTok. We've all seen him. We've all seen him. You know who he is. I'm just saying I don't necessarily think it's the norm like it is here. Something that I find very interesting in K-pop is diet culture. While value systems in Korea seem to be misogynistic, one thing both men and women are harassed for is if they seem to have gained weight, which has led to eating disorders and unnecessary fat shaming. The incident that comes to mind first is the intense bullying that Kyla faced during her time in Preston. Imagine being a 15-year-old girl and having people not cheer for you because you are like an average body size. Absolutely insane. I vividly remember Taemin of SHINee being bullied after coming home from the military and seeming like he gained weight, which most men do when they come home from the mandatory military service. It was very confusing to me. In addition to that, Taemin's body has been an unnecessary subject for headlines since he was a child. And you'd think toxic fans would cut him some slack, given that he's a grown man now, but I guess not. I say all of this to draw attention to how female idols are treated versus male idols. Though male and female idols both face intense scrutiny, female idols are often subjected to slut shaming when caught in a dating scandal. One incident that absolutely haunts me to this day is when Crystal of FX and EXO's Kai were absolutely obliterated in the media when their relationship was exposed. The amount of harassment they both received was ridiculous, but Crystal was called very derogatory names. What I remember is she was accused of being like a sex maniac, and that was because of a rumor that the two bought condoms at a convenience store. I cannot imagine being a grown adult in my 20s being bullied for sleeping with my boyfriend, and my hot boyfriend at that. Are you serious? Bye. And while we're at it, how about we talk about Sully of FX? She took her own life because of the same kind of bullying. She actively stood up for women's rights and got bullied for it. aespa's Karina went viral after it was rumored she had a boyfriend. Fans sent protest trucks and forced her into an apology and maybe even a breakup to make fans feel better. And I say maybe even a breakup because who knows if they actually even broke up. And I'm not trying to say that male idols don't experience these same things. They definitely do. But it's the language that surrounds a female idol scandal that makes it a lot different. And it highlights a conservative and outdated kind of misogyny that is getting very tiresome and very exhausting to watch. I always wonder, why do fans have different languages for male and female scandals? So we're starting to get into the heavier topics, and that really starts with social media and projected fantasies. With the rise of apps like Weverse and Bubble, fans have more personal access to idols than ever. Weverse is an app by Hybe Entertainment, which I would describe it as like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok all in one. Fans are able to watch live shows, communicate with idols, purchase merchandise, and participate in pre-sales through one simplified platform. I got to use Weverse for the first time when I wanted to be a part of the pre-sale for NCT 127's Momentum Tour. So that's just how I kind of saw the app. Weverse makes sense to me, but Bubble is where we start to get a little bit delulu. Bubble is where we start getting a little bit delulu. Bubble is an app started by SM Entertainment that is designed for idols to directly speak to fans. Now, it's not as invasive as it could be. If you pay up, you can receive fake direct messages from your favorite idol. And also send messages back to them. However, I'm gonna like read this directly because I always confuse myself with the description of Bubble. The idol can see all of their subscribers' messages to them. It's basically a big group chat, and they may not see your message directly, even though you can only see theirs. You, as a fan, also cannot see the other subscribers to that idol's bubble. All of that to say, it literally just looks like you're having a conversation with that idol when you're really not. The one thing that I have noticed since COVID is the amount of lives and fan calls these idols have to participate in. It is almost, dare I say, too much. Fan calls were started during the pandemic when we had to social distance because of COVID, so that makes sense. While they were very lucrative, many of these fan calls have been exposed to be incredibly inappropriate or just so hard to watch, so cringy. Many idols are subject to harassment from fans who basically buy their way into multiple fan calls or even sexually harass them when they get the chance with one call. Obviously, not all fans are harassing idols over these fan calls, but there are a lot of instances where there are like repeat offenders. Next thing that I really want to talk about that I feel very, very fiery about are the lives. These idols are constantly on live. I swear to God, these companies are holding a gun to these idols. They are holding a gun to these idols' heads and they're like, go live. A couple months ago, I was on my couch scrolling as I do, and I got a notification from, I think it was like Weverse or Instagram. I can't remember who it was. But I got a notification saying that Jungwoo of NCT 127 was live. And I was genuinely confused because they had just finished their Toronto show on the Momentum tour. And I knew this. And I knew this because I was in the middle of watching TikToks from the show. I was like, damn, like I am on live. The show just ended. And of course, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I don't know if they do these lives or if they choose to do them, but it just seems very suspicious to me that these idols are constantly having to engage with their fans. It is a constant streaming of communication with millions of people, and it just seems very dystopian. Having this kind of communication is normal for friends and family or people in our community, but we don't actually know these idols and they don't know us. It's a little weird. And that leads to what I call the comment section. When an idol makes a mistake, or they like get caught smoking, or they're seen at dinner with someone, or even seen speaking to another person of the opposite sex, it goes viral almost instantly. And the situation gets picked apart by people in the comment sections. A lot of these comments are positive, but if you look closely, you'll see the fans who are clearly in some sort of psychosis. I've seen comments that are like, he would never date her. She would never date someone like him. They're way too busy to hang out or have relationships. He's ugly. She's ugly. He's fat. She's fat. They would never date each other. Stuff like that. And all of this background information isn't just me gossiping. I swear. It's setting us up for the marketing and science behind these parasocial relationships. So let me expose some of the techniques that these companies use on you to get you hooked. Constant documentary or vlog type content on YouTube, bending to the will of fans if they protest, even if the idol is seemingly innocent, numerous music and variety show performances and appearances, constant surveying by paparazzi and related media outlets, fan meetings, including birthday fan meetings, fan calls, constant new music and the rise of mini albums so that they can just keep pumping out albums, dating bans and strict rules, intense schedules with little free time, back-to-back tours. Now, you may be thinking, Alex, I already knew that. Correct. Yes, you did. But if you're someone who has been engaging with all of these things for your favorite group, have you noticed that now you're constantly thinking about them all day long? Have you started maladaptive daydreaming about your bias yet? Yes. How many chapters have you written? I have a few novels myself. And though you may not be a saucing or a stalker, we'll get there. I think a lot of us K-pop fans don't realize we're engaging in these parasocial relationships until it's too late. And it's the subconscious marketing that's why we get so surprised at ourselves when we low-key crash out when there is a scandal. And I'm talking about a real scandal, not someone like vaping or some shit. What I'm about to say is something that I know a lot of you watching will be able to relate to, but you may not want to say it out loud. So please try to listen to this without any shame. If we find out our bias is in a relationship, initially it can feel like we're being cheated on. And I want to let you know that that is all by design. That is being done on purpose. I think what separates us normal fans from toxic fans is that when we get the feeling of being hurt like that, we're able to take a step back and rely on emotional intelligence or empathy to problem solve so that we don't immediately act on our negative feelings, right? Whereas toxic fans will just throw a fit and protest that the idol's career be completely axed. Think of EXO's Chen when we all found out that he was married and having children, right? Toxic fans sat outside of the SM building to protest a man in his late 20s, almost in his 30s. They were protesting him having a family. That kind of behavior doesn't make sense to people with emotional intelligence or empathy. Even if you have a huge crush on Chen and he's plastered all over your vision board, that kind of behavior would be foreign to you because you actually care about how your actions affect other people. What I'm trying to get at is that though there are fans who take it too far and engage in behaviors we would never even think up, it's important that we recognize our participation in the system too. For example, we have all been begging SM to give Mark and Hae-chan a vacation, yet we all still bought tickets to the Momentum tour. Does that make us bad people? No. But we're a part of this too, and we have to take responsibility for that. So that being said, let's talk about saucings. The saucings have been a controversial topic for forever. I don't think I really have anything innovative to say about them, but I would like to give a definition and a face to who these people are and to describe what they do for those who are like not aware. And I also want to talk about some situations that have really struck a nerve with me. There are several, but I'm just going to kind of choose a couple to talk about today. And I want to shed a light on how saucings in particular really allow disposability culture to thrive. So what is a saucing? Saucing is the Korean word for obsessive fan, and that's what they are. They're obsessive fans who constantly cross boundaries and put celebrities in danger. I want to make it very clear that there is no good saucing. There is no one that's better than the other. They're all dangerous and they all need to be dealt with regardless of the level of buffoonery that they participate in. It seems like with the rise of social media, it's become very apparent that there are tons of saucings. If you look closely, they often tell on themselves in online forums, social media comment sections. You can see it in person if you happen to be in the same public space as a celebrity. Some infamous examples of saucings doing the absolute most and worst. Let's start with TVXQ's Kim Jae-jung revealing that a saucing broke into his home while he was sleeping, and then he woke up to her standing over him like a sleep paralysis demon. That's what my sleep paralysis demons do. Like, are you serious? Haechan of NCT's Family Home being broken into a couple years ago. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Probably wasn't even there. There's people breaking into his family home to collect what? What are you there for? What are you there for, you weirdo? We have Sunwoo of The Boys, who was attacked in his apartment staircase by a saucing with her trying to get into his home as well. Nayeon of Twice has had a stalker for what seems like forever now. He is fully convinced that he's in a relationship with her. He keeps posting these creepy video messages. I feel like he pops up every once in a while, and I'm reminded of him, unfortunately. Does anyone remember when EXO was almost kidnapped? Yeah, saucings got a similar looking company van and waited for EXO to finish something and tried to get them into their van like literal kidnappers. Where are you taking them? You fucking weirdos. What are you doing? I'm sorry for my pronunciation. We have Eunhae of Baby Vox, who was shot in the eye with a water gun filled with vinegar and soy sauce when it was discovered she was in a relationship with another idol. Girls' Generation was performing when a saucing tried to kidnap Taeyeon off of stage in front of everybody. For all my NCT stans out there, I think you know who I'm going to talk about next. I think we should all say her name on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, Judy. I want to go a bit deeper into her situation because I was actually there to witness the whole thing in real time. It was something that I really paid attention to and I found it was very odd. Anyway, we have the infamous Judy, who is allegedly a Jaehyun saucing who broke into his hotel room, allegedly, and followed him and the rest of his members to different public spaces, allegedly. She caused a lot of drama. She claimed that she was close with NCT. My theory with her, and just follow me for a second, okay? So just stick around. My theory with her at first was that she got the NDA, got dickmatized, and then got too confident, which makes sense to me. But then she started posting creepy videos of her in the hotel rooms, and that was super weird to me. That is when it started to not make sense. If you're actually seeing one of these guys, you would want to keep it a secret, not just for your safety, but for theirs as well. And because you know that any of these idols could lose their career for just being in a relationship. And if you don't respect that, there's something off about you. Whether she did anything with these guys or not, it doesn't really matter because she completely violated their privacy and crossed their boundaries. And she put their entire careers at risk of being axed, allegedly. To me, I'm all for what? Clout? I don't know. Clout is a very serious disease. So how does this impact disposability culture? These saucings are engaging in illegal activities to obtain information that could be damaging mentally and physically to these celebrities and even cause them to lose their entire career. So many idols have been kicked out of their groups for dating. They are known for paying off staff members, delivery drivers, and others to obtain flight, travel, and hotel information, personal facts, and secrets. They're paying people to stalk idols to track their whereabouts so that they can obtain information to be in the know or have it for blackmail. And you might be wondering, for what? A lot of these saucings say they do what they do because these celebrities need to focus on their careers. In their mind, dating takes away from what their focus should be, which is the fans. They often guilt celebrities into feeling bad for them because without the fans, they would be nothing. That kind of mentality. At the end of the day, all of this is just gaslighting and narcissism. Narcissists often need full access to you and they'll do anything to get it, even if that means putting you in harm's way. Disposability culture relies on someone or a group of people throwing relationships away. And saucings are more than willing to do that, even when these idols don't deserve it and they don't care. Jenette Restivo wrote an article for Harvard Medical School titled Narcissistic Personality Disorder, Symptoms, Diagnosis, and Treatments. Some of the symptoms that she mentioned for narcissistic personality disorder are a little too familiar, right? One being a sense of entitlement, which may include an unreasonable expectation to be treated favorably or for others to comply with their demands and expectations. Protest trucks? Okay. Behavior that is exploitative and takes advantage of others to achieve their own ends. We have arrogance, haughty behaviors and attitudes, a lack of empathy or an unwillingness to identify with the needs of others, a tendency to be envious of others or a belief that others are envious of them. This is not even the whole list, okay? Did that not describe every single saucing we've ever known ever? These kinds of fans will do anything to get others on their side to push their agenda. Narcissists are known for disposing of relationships when they don't get their way and gaslighting those around them to prove their innocence. These fans tend to take advantage of the fact that shame is so heavily woven into Korean culture and thrive off of outdated misogynistic ideals. Specifically in K-pop, a saucing's agenda is very tightly woven into the experience of being a K-pop fan, unfortunately. Even if you hate saucings and you don't believe anything that they say, you still get tempted to listen to the kind of information that they claim to have. Whether you believe it or not, it's kind of like a train wreck. You just can't look away. And I think the only way that companies can get this under control is if they push the narrative that their idols can do whatever they please. And if anyone tries to harm them in any way, legal action is going to be pursued, even if the idol wants to forgive them. I just feel like something needs to be enforced. I want to give another trigger warning. We're going to be talking a lot about suicide, severe mental health struggles. So if that is a problem, I completely understand. That is a very big trigger for you. I completely understand. I'll see you in the next one. So we're going to be talking about the metaphorical and real deaths of idols. This includes suicide, death threats, and metaphorical funerals. So when you let a narcissist get their way, they get worse. The behavior can get more violent, more out of control, and more calculated. And I'm not blaming anyone for letting this behavior get worse, right? When you're in these kinds of relationships, it's very hard to get out of them. When I was in a relationship with a narcissist, every cycle we had got worse. And it broke me down to the point of where I didn't want to be here anymore. And yet my happiness still depended on whatever his next move was. It's really important that we make the connection that this is the same kind of dynamic that these idols have with these toxic fans. There is a constant battle for control over the narrative of their lives. A narcissist's energy source depends on access to you and your energy. When it gets cut off, they do anything to get back to it. They'll stalk you, they'll show up to your home, they'll email you, they'll contact your friends and family to try to get a hold of you. They'll try to contact people in your community, right? They'll do anything until they find some sort of new supply that will give them what they want. Until then, you have to constantly put up new barriers and be hyper aware of your surroundings, just in case. Kuhara fought until the end. Her ex-boyfriend, who assaulted her, was blackmailing her with a sex tape, and she faced harsh criticism from the public for engaging in sexual activity. Her legacy lives on, as many Koreans have called for public reform regarding sex crimes and praising her for her role in helping expose some of those involved in the Burning Sun scandal. What makes me very angry is that she is not here to see her impact. SHINee's Jonghyun took his own life, leaving behind a letter describing the depression and pressure that he felt. People say from fame, but he felt a lot of pressure just from life in general. Obviously, fame is a part of that. One thing that sticks out the most to me is how lonely he felt. It seemed like he felt like no one cared, which we all know is not true, but that doesn't mean it didn't feel that way for him. And that is something that these toxic fans don't really get. They don't understand empathy. They don't feel empathy. They don't really understand what would lead him to doing something like that in the first place. And that's what really, really concerns me. Sunghan of Rise was brutally harassed by fans when it was discovered that he had been in a romantic relationship before debuting. These fans sent funeral wreaths to protest his position in the group, encouraging SM to remove him. Toxic fans celebrated a metaphorical death of a young boy who didn't do anything wrong. And his company listened. Sunghan was removed from group activities, and then he was later put back in the group only to be taken out again when fans protested his position again. This incident caused a sort of trend. More metaphorical funerals started popping up for idols whose fans were trying to cancel them. I have to tell you, I've seen a lot, but I was absolutely shocked at this kind of behavior. Celebrating someone's death should not be taken lightly. And in my opinion, these kinds of behaviors point towards individuals who are not fit to be a part of public functions or allowed at any sort of K-pop event. If you look at someone like Sunghan and you say, you deserve to die because you were in a relationship, you are an absolute threat to the public and you should be treated as such. That is not normal behavior. Those are not normal thoughts, and you need serious help. And I know this is very dark, but I was genuinely concerned that he was going to take his own life after that. The next person that I want to talk about is pretty controversial, but I also think he is the perfect example for talking about disposability culture. And that is a former member of NCT and WayV, Lucas. Lucas was canceled and put on hiatus from NCT after he was accused of having relationships with fans, allegedly accepting expensive gifts, and just basically being like a manipulative liar and cheater and just like a bad boyfriend. Now, the whole Lucas situation is and has always been so confusing to me. Because at the end of the day, I always believe women, and if he's an asshole, he's an asshole, right? But I got very confused when it was brought to light that WayV had a really bad saucing problem, and most groups do, but like it's really bad for WayV. I also want to mention that I didn't get heavy into NCT until around 2023. I'd always been kind of like a casual fan, but I didn't start like really standing until 2023. So this is about 2 years after Lucas was put on hiatus, and I was learning everything after the fact. WayV, amongst other groups, have a couple of saucings that love to obtain their flight information, stalk them at the airport, and even purchase seats to sit near them. There was chatter online about one saucing in particular who allegedly admitted to making up the Lucas scandal because she was upset at Lucas for calling them out for stalking. And we could talk about the Lucas situation all day long. The Lucas situation could be a YouTube series in and of itself. I was really curious when SM decided to keep him on. Though he was removed from NCT, they kept him as a solo artist. Why, right? If he did these terrible things, why would they keep him? He also had been seen out with other NCT members, so in my mind, I was like, well, nobody hates him, so what's going on? And Lucas released his docuseries on his YouTube channel for his comeback. I was excited to see if he was going to talk about what had happened. Even though he apologized for his behavior and admitted to doing something wrong, he never specified what he did, and it just made me more confused. I realized that I'm never going to truly know what happened with all of them involved in that scandal. And even though my heart goes out to all of the women who may have been involved. I also wondered if Lucas was telling the truth in his docuseries when he said that he had changed. And I say that because it was very obvious to me during his documentary when he described not leaving his home for months that he was probably contemplating taking his own life. And I know that that sounds very dark, but it was very obvious to me that that was the kind of depression he was alluding to. Anyone, go watch the docuseries, listen to how he described what he was going through. It's like he didn't leave his house for months, like he wasn't really taking care of himself, like he let his hair grow super long, like etc. Describing like it's just very obvious. Anyone who's been through that kind of depression knows exactly what's going on there. And it just makes me wonder, like, what if he did? You know, what if he did? Would everyone still speak about him in the same way? I don't think so. And now I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to give my stance on Lucas one way or another. I certainly do have my opinions on that situation and I'm very open about them, but that's not really the point here. During his docuseries, I reflected a lot on how I felt about him returning, asking myself these questions in this order. Do I believe Lucas is innocent? If he isn't, do I think he deserves to have a solo album? Does he deserve to be an NCT? Even if he's never put in NCT again, does he deserve to have a career in entertainment? And then I asked myself, do I even have the right to determine the fate of his career? Even if he did cheat on his girlfriends and ask for expensive gifts, does that mean he deserves to be disposed of? Though the women who may have been involved in this scandal have every right to shun him from their life. I certainly don't talk to any of my exes. I don't think that Lucas deserves to be disposed of. And I certainly don't think he deserves to die. If Lucas cannot evolve, then can any of us? It's just something to think about. As fans, we all have different value systems, morals, and ideas on what relationships should or shouldn't look like. We can insert our opinion all day long, but if we are unable to see things from another's perspective, it's not very likely that anyone will be willing to see it from ours. I mean, you get what you put out into this world. You cannot expect people to hear you out if you're unwilling to do the same. If Lucas really did do everything that he was accused of, he will get what he deserves. And I would argue, I think he's gone through a pretty good portion of it. So it's time to talk about protection. So who's protecting the idols? Who's protecting the normal fans? Who's at fault for this? Who is at the root of the problem? In my opinion, there are two groups of people here that need to be protected. We have the idols and then we have the normal fans, right? Both groups need to be protected from toxic fans, saucings, and the companies that enable the toxic fans and saucings to continue their behavior. We also need to be protected from the companies that market unrealistic and fake relationships to us. Slave contracts have been an open secret in this industry since like the dawn of time. So it's pretty clear that both groups that need protection are being emotionally and financially manipulated for capital gain. It's just happening in different fonts. This is a system that recruits children, trains them for so many years, molds them into a product while simultaneously prepping the fandom for the arrival of said new product. Saucings and toxic fans bring a lot of money. They bring in a lot of money, often spending thousands of dollars on albums, fan signs, and personal meet and greet opportunities. I'm not sure if this is true, but I recently heard a rumor that someone spent $16K to get like a picture with Mark Lee. I get it, but also $16K, Jesus. I get it. But also what? Huh? Anyway, a lot of money is spent on training and molding these idols. Dance lessons, singing lessons, PR training, wardrobe, plastic surgery, and other aesthetic work, and marketing, right? These things aren't bad, but when you think about how young some of them are, I would imagine that it can get quite daunting, especially when you're being prepped to debut. Your company is already, or more than likely, marketing you to the public, and you have fans before any music is even released. You're already stock being put up on the shelf, and there are people outside of the store already lining up before the store even opens. All of that work and training takes money, which is treated as individual debt. Some of them spend years under contract paying back these debts. One situation that has never sat right with me, one of many, I guess, is the battle between New Jeans and their separation from Hybe. Regardless of which side you're on, I've been pretty confused as to why a lot of spectators have been hating on these girls as if they should be making all the right decisions. It's very obvious to me that they have no idea what the right path is to take. These girls were between the ages of 14 and 18 when they debuted. And even though all except for one are adults by now, it's very clear that they believe that they're being steered in the right direction. They're all still very young. Minji, who's only 21, is the oldest. Do you expect young girls who have been controlled by their company since they were children to make all of the right decisions if they've never actually been on the outside of that system? This is another situation that's very confusing to me, along with the Lucas situation. It is something that we could definitely talk about all day long, but I also just want to say, like, this is something to think about. Everyone has a lot of opinions, but you'll never actually know what's happening behind the scenes. Being mean and telling these girls that they're being stupid is a lot different than giving these girls constructive criticism or advice on what their next legal move should be. Many artists have actually broken away from the companies that they debuted under and starting their own companies, including multiple members of EXO. EXO CBX was recently in a legal squabble with their original company, SM Entertainment, for transparency of wages. The members' solo activities are now being managed under Baekhyun's label IMB 100, while group activities still remain under SM. And they're not the only artists who have started their own companies. We have Jennie of Blackpink with Oddly, I don't know how to say this. I'm gonna butcher this. Oddly. Her company's called Oddly. It's French. CL of 21 has Very Cherry Entertainment. Jackson Wang of GOT7 has Team Wang. Lay of EXO has Chromosome Entertainment, and that is just scratching the surface. Now, the common denominator here are the companies. At the end of the day, it all comes down to companies and what their procedures are in regards to protecting their artists. If the companies favor slave contracts and bend to the will of sasaengs, who is going to be there to pick up the pieces when somebody cracks? I feel like this industry is a bubble that is going to pop if they don't get it under control. Though supervillains cause a lot of damage, when have you ever seen them truly succeed for the long haul? In the next 10 years, I genuinely believe that we're going to see a lot more K-pop idols leave the companies they debuted under to either go start their own labels or go work under a label that was started by one of their group members. As for the fans, the only things that we can do are advocate for better treatment by speaking up and especially supporting these artists if they decide to split from their companies. Boycotting certain activities can work as well. Boycotting can be kind of complicated. Like, it's not, but it is. It's like easy in theory, but it's like we also know that if we like boycott them, then they're going to get put in the dungeon, right? Like, they'll kind of just like get shelved and then they're like under contracts and they're not doing anything. So it gets kind of murky there, but I would encourage you to do what you feel is right. Individually, the best thing that you can do is to pursue your own emotional safety through discovering who you are, through therapy, community building, and truly walking your own path parallel to those that you admire. You are your own person. Nobody owns you, and you don't own anybody either. Whew. We've made it. We've made it to cancel culture. Here we go. Cancel culture was originally meant to banish those who hurt others to the depths of some sort of random forever forest where no one can find them. But I think a lot of us have lost the plot. I don't believe that anyone truly believes in cancel culture anymore. And that's because in order to truly believe in it, you have to be okay with the idea of you being banished to the forever forest when you make a mistake. But nobody wants that. Everyone and their mother wants forgiveness. No one is perfect. When I see dogpiling on idols in comment sections, it really, to me, just looks like a bunch of people jumping on a bandwagon to feel included. A lot of the time, there is no emotional regulation, patience, or organized thought process to come to the conclusions that they come to in these comment sections. Toxic fans make a bunch of unnecessary noise into a void so that they can temporarily feel in control of something because they have zero control over their own lives. They need to make it everybody else's problem. Attempting to cancel idols because they smoke vape, or engage in private relationships is just a very loud way of saying, I have no friends, my parents don't pay attention to me, school is hard, and I don't believe I deserve to be seen by society. Not wanting your favorite idols to fall in love and be happy is a very dangerous projection of how much you hate yourself. I mean, if you can't have the idols, then no one can, right? Bands like this need everybody else to be miserable with them. Trying to cancel idols for not being a certain weight, shape, or size, or skin color is really a projection of how ugly you think you are. It's ironic too, because even after all that money spent on funeral flowers, protest trucks, hate campaigns, and time spent in the hate comments, these idols still don't want you. Yeah, this kind of behavior doesn't change their mind. The quicker you realize that being a total bitch doesn't get you anywhere near your true goals, the quicker the healing process can start. All right, so let's leave cancel culture for those who actually deserve to have their platform taken away due to violence, predatorial, and dangerous or inappropriate behavior, okay? Idols. They're people too, you know? When my best friend and I were in LA for NCT 127's Momentum tour, I'm not gonna lie, I thought they were AI. I was like, oh my God, they're real? It was such an insane feeling. And it's one that you often feel when you're at concerts, seeing someone that you've admired for a long time. It's this realization that they're more than just 5 songs on a mini album. They're more than like a 20-minute heavily edited vlog that I watched on YouTube yesterday, right? They're real people who go off script, sing live, dance live, and go home and eat real food, and they live real lives. Yes, anyone with a brain knows this, but when you've been subconsciously thrown into parasocial relationship programming, you need these reminders that they are human too. It's okay to admire them and their work and to be excited and nervous to like see or meet them, but putting them on a pedestal can often be harmful due to the fact that they're marketed to not really be as complex as us. These idols are marketed as products to be consumed, and any good business is here to answer a problem. And right now, our problem, at least amongst young people, is the loneliness and a lack of community. K-pop provides a space where we can go and be immersed into a perfectly curated universe outside of us and our everyday problems. And I 100% believe these companies are taking advantage of the loneliness. When an idol breaks out of their own Truman Show, it's important that we remember that they're not just some AI bot. Even Plav. There's real people behind them, you know? Okay? Losing your sense of humanity isn't going to help you when you've reached your 30s, 40s, or 50s, and you look around and suddenly everyone has their own community, and you're still living in a virtual world created to take your money. In conclusion, I want to first thank everyone for sitting through this. And I have a really hard time making eye contact, so me going like this, I'm sorry. Thank you for hearing what I have to say. I really do appreciate it with all my heart. And I also want to thank my friend Serena for helping me out with the history portion as well. You definitely gave me some very insightful and needed feedback, so thank you. The biggest thing I want to leave people with is that I don't believe most people in the world deserve to be disposed of. I don't even believe that my exes who cheated on me deserve to die or be shunned from society. Why? Because I went to therapy through it by talking about my feelings in a safe environment with a professional who's an expert in helping people move on with their lives. Now, does that mean I still talk to my exes? No. I actually want them to forget that I'm a real person. I want them to forget that I exist. But I am okay with them moving on with their lives, learning from their mistakes, and finding partners who are a much better fit for them than I ever could be. And I'm perfectly fine admitting what I've done wrong in these relationships. I'm not perfect and I never will be. What's important is that we all admit to what we've done, take accountability, and find a solution to try to move forward. And I'm not excusing my exes for cheating on me. Cheating is not okay. But I'm also not going to spend the rest of my life wishing death on a person who I claim to not want to get back together with. Cancel culture and shunning should be reserved for those who engage in extremist behavior, anyone who engages in extreme violence, psychological abuse, predatory or inappropriate behavior, or cult-like exploitation. Those are the people that need to be thrown in a dungeon. I don't think Jungwoo deserves to join them after being caught with a cigarette in his mouth. I hope that everyone watching this at least reflected on how they've participated in this toxic culture, even if they didn't do it on purpose. Most K-pop fans, in my experience, are incredibly kind, and they're nice, and they're talented, and incredibly beautiful as well. And specifically, N-Citizens are like the funniest people I've ever met in my whole life. I genuinely believe that with a bit of self-reflection, accountability, and touching more grass will help us be free of the capitalistic, misogynistic, racist, and immature claws that disposability culture depends on. We all deserve happiness. We all deserve romance. And overall, we all deserve a little grace, especially if we're truly being honest and taking accountability for our actions. Loneliness is something that a lot of us are currently experiencing. And instead of putting that burden on people that we don't know, we need to figure out what we can do for ourselves and our immediate surroundings. I would encourage everyone to reach out to a trusted friend, family member, teacher, or professor, or a therapist to talk about how you're truly feeling. You deserve to find peace instead of having to escape. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments, so please let me know. Thank you, and until next time, go outside. Bye.